So, welcome back now to the variables part. So, a variable is basically the most basic element of a programming language as well as Python because that's a programming language. It's an object, and in that object you can store information. So, you can name it whatever you want. For example, you can say like cheesecake and give that variable, which you just call cheesecake, some thing to store in that object. For example, cheesecake equals 1. Then you store in that object the number 1 and called it cheesecake. You could say x as well. Then we're basically by the variables you know from math and stuff like that, x, y, z, gamma, theta, and all those we use are nothing more than variables, and they can stand for different numbers. But in programming language, we can tell like define x as something, and at one point we give it a value, for example 1, and from that point on the object has the value 1. So this is basically how it works. Let's have a look at it. First of all, we want to assign value to a variable, okay? So what we do is we first have to define how we want to call a variable. In that case, let's just call it my variable. This will be how our variable is called. We could have called it cheesecake, we could have called it x, whatever we wanted. And let's say this variable will have the value of 42. Now, if we execute the code, in that case, my variable, the object, should have the value 42. How can we check if that's true? We already know the print function, so let's use print, and let us print my variable. And if we now hit execute, we see 42 is printed because the object, my variable, has the input, the value 42. So that works. Let's make another variable. So let's go back to our code block and say my second variable will have the value 42 as well, but this time a string. So 42. And then we can print that as well. So my second variable should now have 42. So if we run that again, it runs from the top of the code block to the bottom of the code block, as we can see here. But we see as well 42 is printed. So what that means is if we run from top to bottom, it's always a script. Computers are not that smart as we are. They're quite dumb. They do just what we tell them step by step. So it goes in the first line, assign values to variable is a comment, ignore that, then assign 42 to my variable, then print my variable, then do nothing because there's an empty line, then my second variable, apply to that 42 as a string, then print that. That's how programs work, or scripts. So in that case, we have found a solution, we printed 42 and 42. With that, I have a small exercise for you. You now learned how to print. You now learned how to give variables an input. And usually, if we start to learn programming, we always try to fulfill the Hello World challenge in different ways. Hello World challenge means actually that we somehow write code which has the result that a text in which the text will be hello world, will be somehow shouted out, printed out, whatever, to the world to tell, hey, it works, hello world, I'm a broken, I'm running. That's the idea, and we do that here as well. With what you learned so far, just print hello world. You have learned different approaches to that. Do whatever you want. This video will be over. Solution will be the next video. See you soon.